Hi, it's Artie from Brown Bear Herbs. I wanted to talk to you today about healing from concussions or mild traumatic brain injury or post concussive syndrome. Um, so, another term for concussion is mild traumatic brain injury, but that could even be something less pronounced than a concussion, depending on who's looking at you. And then, if the recovery from the concussion takes more than 2 weeks, then you would have what's called a post concussion syndrome. So, um, and joining me today is Cutie. He'll be providing me some nice emotional support for this video. Anyways, and probably snoozing. So, in the very beginning, most of this relates to post-concussive syndrome where you're not recovering, but as fast as would be considered normal. And then what happens is that you're more prone to like a concussion with more serious consequences. So some people might just kind of shake it off, and then you might be having trouble for a year or so. But you can definitely recover most, if not all, of your functioning. That's my opinion. Definitely follow your doctor's recommendations. In the beginning, it's recommended that you and make sure you're in a very low stimulus environment. So darkened rooms, no screens. That could be really challenging, but it's just really important for you to think about the long-term impact on your recovery if you can avoid the stimulation. It's really important. So not even just like laying around watching movies. I found I've had a couple concussions, and I found that when I was in the worst of it, I would watch TV and I would think that I was fine because the TV watching required so little brain activity that I didn't realize that there was a problem. It was, to me, even at the time, it was like extremely illuminating about how much TV or watching videos numbs your brain. So just take your stress level for your brain down quite a bit. Studies show that even in very mild head injuries, the blood-brain barrier is compromised. And I think this is why when you have the concussion, you're so much more sensitive to the outside world, and you're so much more likely to be overreactive emotionally and to be like overly sensitive to the stimulation in your environment. So whether that's like lights or people talking to you, or other people's emotions, you literally don't have the same barrier to screen out the information coming in that you used to. As an herbalist, I did work with a lot of herbs for recovery from my post-concussive syndrome that I had, and I didn't really have a lot of good luck with the herbs, which is kind of surprising. But a lot of herbs may not go past the blood-brain barrier very well, or I'm not really sure why, because there's a lot of good herbs for your brain. But I'm just going to talk about what did help me, because I think it's really valuable, and I meet a lot of people who've had head injuries. And you might not even think you've had a head injury, but then as you're listening to other people, you might be like, well, I did have a really hard semester that after that car accident. It was really hard for me to focus in class. I had headaches, or I had difficulty communicating. I would say I'll tell you the symptoms of the worst head injury I had, just to give you a feel where I was at and where I got with the efforts that I made. I had a lot of trouble with memory. I would forget things after just a second or two, so I'd leave on the stove and stuff like that. That was dangerous. And it took me a really long time to complete a very easy task. Like, for example, I do a lot of mail order. I did a little bit back then. And one day in the beginning, it took me like 4 hours to put one box together of like one product in a box. And that's when I knew there was a problem. I hadn't really talked to doctors much at that point. But that's when I was like, uh-oh, we've got a serious problem. And So memory, the forgetfulness was really like why I was having so much trouble doing a task. It was just, I'd get my attention would get interrupted and I'd lose my train of thought. And then loss of normal functioning in certain areas of my life. So I used to be, prior to this, I was like really good at math. I studied math in college, and then I pretty much had no ability to do math for a few years. Increase in, you from a head injury, you can have an increase in your ability to do things too. And at that time, my visual cognition, my ability to understand imagery got a lot stronger. So some good things can happen, but I wouldn't have done it just for that. And let's see, a lot of emotions were much more intense. I would cry easily or get upset when that wasn't my normal personality. And I've talked to a lot of other people who had concussions, and they have expressed that like one of the most profound things was the emotional side of it. So I'm going to let you know about, I'm looking at my list. Okay, for basic stuff, you want to make sure you get as much care for your body as possible. So like acupuncture, chiropractor, and massage are really helpful. And I think that's pretty commonplace at this point for like recovering from a motor vehicle accident or a sports injury. I feel like, I don't think that's just in Portland. I think a lot of places, they are pretty quick to recommend you try that stuff, especially because like a lot of car insurances will cover that if it's an MBA. So take as much advantage of that as you can, because you can do that even if you can't think straight. Somebody else can help you. And you're going to be like hanging out in the low stimulation. Then also arnica is really good for trauma. So for this, I worked with a provider who used the 1M dose of arnica. So I would recommend that. The different doses relate to different types of situations. And so if you can find the 1M, I would get that. If you can't find it, then see what you can get. But I did find that the arnica, homeopathic arnica, was helpful. I also have used arnica oil. I like that better than the ingested herbs for this type of situation with the concussions. And then I had another concussion since this one, and that allowed me to like heal really quickly because I already knew all these tools. But with the arnica oil, I used it like on my neck and my head, and that helped. So I like the arnica oil and then the homeopathic 1M. The medical key medical way to deal with this is to boost your baseline. So I didn't really understand this the first time it was recommended to me, but exercising daily, like once you're past that, whatever recommendations they have for the first week or so of resting, then exercising daily, and just for 20 or 30 minutes to increase your overall stamina, your baseline. So you just have a lot more energy, because what I was also finding when I had the severe concussion was that, and more minor ones, that I would, in the beginning, like the first couple hours of the day, I would have energy. I could do some pretty important tasks, like take care of bills and make business plans and stuff like that, and care for, like, arrange for medical needs to be taken care of in my family. But then, like, pretty quickly, my energy went down, and my ability to function and make decisions went down. So by exercising daily, you're kind of giving yourself more room before you get fatigued. So I do. I really found that to be helpful, and it helps with sleep too, because my sleep was disturbed with the concussion, and I think that's pretty common as well. I also had some falls, so there's a lot of things, but doing the exercise improves. Like the doctors, I asked them, well, like, what's the science behind this? And they kind of said to me, different providers were just like, we don't really know exactly how it works, but it works. So brains are pretty complicated, and exercising helps. So I recommend that. Meditation daily. I had a meditation practice before this. Accident happened for 10 or it's probably like 15 years already before that. And so I have just a mental commitment to myself to meditate daily. And so even when my concentration level was very poor, and I didn't feel like I was actually meditating because I would just sit there and like breathe, and then I'd forget what I was doing, and then I have to come back and breathe. But you know what? That helped hugely, especially with my emotional well-being and staying more emotionally stable throughout the day. So when I would meditate in the morning versus forget until the evening, those days when I did it beforehand was like so much better qualitatively. And that's also like really radically reducing my stimulation. You know, my eyes are closed and I'm in a quiet room. So giving yourself a break like that, and it was recommended to me a lot of times to do more breaks like that. And they weren't saying to meditate. Maybe if they had, I would like have done it more, but just to take breaks where you have 10 or 15 minutes of just quiet time, and that could be meditation if you want to call it that, or it could just be like I'm going to my room and closing my eyes and turning off the lights and turning off the screens. 15 minutes, set alarm, and then go back to life. And that, I think that those kind of brain breaks are really, really helpful. So I really give yourself permission to do that. Then I was recommended by physicians and naturopaths do like fish oil. I'd used algae DHA. I'm a vegetarian. That was really helpful for my emotional stability. Really helpful. I recommend that a lot. Vitamin D, also very helpful. And a lot of doctors recommend lower doses, like 1,000 units or 2,000 units a day. But I think a lot of research suggests that 7 to 10,000 is safe. You can do your own research, do what you're comfortable with. But if you're living above LA in the northern hemisphere, then you're probably not getting enough daylight. And that does help with your body in a lot of ways. And as far as I know, the studies where people have OD'd on it have been when the labels of the product were mislabeled, like they weren't taking the amount that it said on the bottle. They were taking a lot more because the bottle was mislabeled. But like I said, do your own research, talk to your provider. But vitamin D is a really helpful one. And then two major things that I wanted to share with you that I don't know how I got so lucky with them, but lion's mane is a mushroom. You can get it easily on Amazon, or I'm sure a lot of health food stores have it, or natural vitamin stores, stuff like that, herb stores. But they had two different kinds on Amazon. One was like, I can't remember the names, but they both worked. They both worked fine because there's one I typically used, and then I just switched over to the other one for a while because of availability or whatever, and they both worked great. And one thing that I actually find beautiful about Amazon is I know there's a lot of problems with Amazon as a corporation. Most corporations have problems, but and it's huge. But the reviews on there for the lion's mane were amazing. It's mostly used for cognitive decline, like Alzheimer's and dementia, stuff like that. But any kind of memory loss, it's helpful for. So the people that did reviews on the lion's mane on Amazon really gave a lot of information about like their people they were providing care for. So I think that's a useful resource for you if you're interested in the mushroom and you're just hearing my story, you don't know what else about it. I will say that for me, I took 2 capsules a day with both of the different products, and it would take about 2 weeks to get up to the therapeutic level, I would say. And then like once I ran out of the bottle, if I forgot to reorder, it would take about 2 weeks to go back to what would be my new baseline. So let's say I'd taken it for 3 months regularly every day, 2 capsules, and I was feeling like pretty good, like I had a new pretty decent level of memory and stamina. And then 2 weeks would go by and I'd be like, oh, this is the new me, like without anything in my system. And then I would reorder. So that's just to give you an idea of what to expect for whether you can find out whether it's helpful for you. But I loved it for the memory. And I'm not a big mushroom person, so that's really the main mushroom I've worked with. But I cannot say enough about how much that lion's mane helped me, and I almost wish I could take it now, just because it was. Maybe I should just to reconnect with the mushroom energy. I don't really feel like I need it, but who knows? Maybe it would teach me some new things about where I'm at with my brain, clean out the cobwebs. Yeah, so that was really great. And then, and I did take that for a couple years, I think, off and on. And then flower essences. This is like the big thing that helped me so much because, well, there's a couple different aspects of the mental health, because I was really trying to address the mental health stuff, because I had depression when I was younger, and then once I started meditating up until the time of this accident, which was I'd say about like 15 years, I had not had depression. And so, I felt like the meditation helped so much, but now I was still depressed with this concussion. Now, that's really typical of concussions, and it's also, there's physical things that can happen aside from like your emotional life. I used to do neurological nursing, and it was really hard to separate your brain from your emotions. Like if there's a problem with your brain, there's usually a problem with your emotion, or it shows up in your emotions, and vice versa. So we can't really, even medical science can't really like pull those apart very easily. But I was just trying to understand rationally like how I could address my emotions so that I would not get depressed. And I did have lowered kind of impulse control at that time with the concussion common symptom. So, I was like, I don't want to have these be pulled around by my emotions. How can I deal with this? And so from reading the Bach flower essence theory earlier, Bach flower essences, the idea behind it is that if you address the emotion that comes up with a sickness, or, it could just be an emotion, but let's say you're sick. Let's say you get a cold, and your response to getting a cold is being whiny and feeling like no one loves you, or something like that, or getting afraid you're going to die, or something. Like, let's say you're not very sick and that happens, or you get very stoic and nobody can know that you're sick. So by taking the flower essence that relates to that emotional side of it, your sickness becomes greatly reduced, and you might even recover. So I think of this also in terms of my work with addiction and lifestyle stuff, like my herbal cigarettes, trying to help people quit tobacco. You want to, and just my own life, you don't want to compound a problem. So let's say you're having, you're addicted to tobacco, and you also feel ashamed of that, and you don't want anybody to know because it's a dirty, disgusting habit. So you got a physical addiction, and then you also have this emotional component, and then the emotional component is doing nothing but getting it in the way of the healing the physical. So my goal for myself and other people is always to just like take away that emotional side of it, or resolve the emotions there, so that you can just focus on having one problem instead of having a compounded problem, which could be two problems, could be more. But same thing with like weight issues, stuff like that, like, and just trying to make sure that you aren't, if you've got a weight problem, you've got a weight problem. Don't also add to it like, I look horrible, I'm not like a bad person for not being able to control myself, or whatever. So just having the one problem. So flower essences are a great way to deal with that emotional component and allow you to deal with a more simplified problem. We all have health problems like that, but that was a way that I dealt with the emotional side. So there are flower essences for everything, for every kind of emotional thing. There's so much more detail than even like the, what's that called? The DSM. Anyway, so one that worked really well for me that I'll say is filaree, Filaree. And that is one that helps with repetitive thinking. So even if you have like OCD or something like that, I would say really recommend trying the filaree. And the way that I like to do flower essences, I take a liter jar for the day and put 5 drops of the flower essence in the water bottle, and then you succuss the bottom of the water bottle several times so you feel like the energy expand. Or if you're not that tuned into energy, you could just do it 5 to 10 times until you get bored or something, and then sip that throughout the day. And if you need big drinks of water, just have a glass of water or something like that, or have a separate bottle. But that filaree was amazing because that was a real problem. It was a real problem with the concussion that I had, repetitive thinking. And that's common, I guess, with the concussions. But I even realized as I was healing, I became like so obsessed with remembering things that I felt like if I didn't continuously think about something that needed to happen, that it would just drop off my brain, and I would just forget all about it for days. So that was a kind of compounded problem where like it would have been better for me to just like figure out like an alarm system and a list on my phone than to try to kind of harass my brain by keeping the same thought in my head. But so filaree is super wonderful. And then there were so many others that I used. I love to just go to a place that sells them, and that's really hard right now. And just like read all the bottle, see what I was drawn to, and read the bottle description. If it had anything to do with me, like just get it, because they're like $11 or $12, and that getting like several of those might seem like a lot of money, but if it takes you from being like on the edge and feeling like you like collapse emotionally at any time to feeling like you're just going to be fine, and they're going to last you a couple months or something like that, then because it's 5 drops a day or something, then I feel like it's cheaper than therapy for sure. So if you can't get to a store where you can browse like that, there's so many people that sell them online. You can definitely start with the Bach flower essences. That's a limited number, maybe like I think there's like 38 of them or something like that, and they are broken down into categories like fears or grief or something like that. So that's probably the best way to start, is to either get a book or look online at Bach flower essences and then just see what calls for you. But once you get into it, like if you're like walking around the neighborhood and you see like some hollyhocks and you're just like, oh, freaking love these pink hollyhocks, then just look up like pink hollyhock flower essences and start to get to know different flowers that you're around. And you can learn how to make your own flower essences. That's cheap and involves like the flower. You don't even necessarily need to like pick the flower. There's no pick methods. Some sunshine, rainwater, and then brandy is a preservative. And if you don't like alcohol, you could do, and you make your own, you could do, when you make them, you're just using the water and the flour and the sun. So you could make batches and then stick them in your fridge and keep them for a little bit. You don't need to use the alcohol. It's just to make them last longer. And yeah, so like some examples of other flower essences are like, you have trouble opening up to your therapist, or you had a difficult time with your mother when you were little and you feeling distant from people or something like that. So they're just really endlessly, or you like to control other people when you're upset, different things like that. So I am confident there's some flower essences for you, and I would just kind of like make a little like flower essence cocktail for the day, and I might put in like 3 or 6. I think that the current wisdom is that we're capable of handling several remedies at a time. I know like in different medicines, I tend to work more simply, but in like Chinese medicines, they'll have like so many different herbs in one remedy. I feel like if you use like 6 or so flower essences, that would be like a lot in my opinion at one time, but fine. So like a high end would be 6 at one time, and then maybe like 2 or 3 would be like a small amount. And it's a good way, it's just a good way to learn about yourself too. Like, what emotions do you have that you can let go of pretty easily by using like this little tool. And then later you might be like off doing something and you'd be like, oh, really wish I had some like pink peony right now, because I'm like, that would really help. You could just kind of start to learn how to like, call in that energy, be like, pink peony, like bring that energy into me so that I can feel that letting go of that emotion that will allow me to live more fully right now. So there's different strategies. That wasn't the only thing I did with the emotions. With the emotions, I found that like if I had something to deal with emotionally and I didn't deal with it, it would grossly hold back my brain functioning. So it took a little while to discover that, but I just started realizing that like those emotions were like giant like cinder blocks like holding me back. And if I could just look at the problem and process it, I could just be that much lighter. So then in efforts to like deal with this, like the emotional side of the concussion, I just decided I am going to process every single problem I've ever had. And I was really motivated because I was like, this is not going to take me down. Like this, I got some emotional problems I haven't been addressing, and I'm not going to let them take me down. I have a child and I have a life to live beyond this. So to help with that, like the flower essences did help with that for sure, because as I was processing things, I had that assistance. I did do some therapy at that time, and I worked with some like more shamanic type of people. But one thing that helped a lot was acupuncture, and I used chrysocolla too. That's a gemstone for letting go. So I have quite a bit of gem essences. So if you're ever looking for a gem essence, and I have a lot of flower essences too. I can do custom ones through individual consultations. So you can let me know by contacting me through the website if you'd like to have some custom essence made for you. But the chrysocolla helped a lot to make it easier to let go. And I just kind of I went through it with like brute force. I am a very driven person, and I just was like, okay, I see a problem. I got to face this, and I got to work through it with like whoever and whatever the tools I have are. And I think that was huge for getting over the concussion and actually like reclaiming my brain, because I feel like as people age, like I kind of wonder like how much of that decline that happens with age, just naturally, like totally healthy brains, like getting a little bit fuzzy upstairs or forgetting things here and there, is because of that emotional baggage, essentially, that's weighing you down. So maybe you're watching this you don't even have a head injury. You're watching it because of somebody does. But think about that in your own life. Think about the emotions that you have that you haven't been dealing with. And let me tell you, like, to deal with them as much as you can and to let those go is a huge gift. I also have a lot of past life memories of myself and sometimes other people, and I see that, we may have things that we're concerned about, like success or, money or stuff like that, that's more superficial and material in this life. But the things that, like they say, you don't end your life thinking, oh, I wish I would have made a lot more money. Like my dad is kind of ending his life right now, and he's, going through stuff and get rid of stuff, and he's like, I can't take it with me. So, but those emotions, the unresolved emotions with your loved ones, the problems that you had in your life, the hurts that you experienced, you need to deal with those, because they will create problems in future lives, or they can. So just, and I guess another good resource for that end of healing is maybe not during concussion healing, but just if you're generally looking at your mental health, is I use the Toltec Secret exercises. I only gotten halfway through the book, to be honest, but I did some of the mask exercises, which is funny for all the mask wearing we're doing right now, but there's some mask exercises where you like tell your story of your like most, you look through your life and you tell the stories of the most like deeply impacting emotional experiences. There's a bunch of different exercises, but I remember that one in particular. And it was amazing because I think that's when I had a lot of breakthroughs with the past life things, because I was like, I'd had all these hurts, but sometimes all those hurts can be like too much, too intense for you to realize the pattern of your life. And when I did that, I was like, whoa, I have just been having the same types of things happen through my whole life that are just totally not okay, and I don't need to take responsibility for any of those things. Like, bad things can happen to you from outside. Like, that's not my responsibility. And just realizing that pattern, that seemed to open up a lot of access to that past life stuff, and realizing that those were patterns continuing from my past. And I think by wearing the mask, you are able to dissociate yourself a little bit from your current physical body, and that allows you to like be open to more information, because you stop thinking, oh, I am this face. Anyway, so I guess it's not the emotional stuff does just take you boldly working on stuff, and that's a hard thing to do sometimes. But those are some tools for the concussion healing. So I use those tools that I've just described, and I did recover my math skills, my emotional equilibrium, and my memory. It's fine now. So, and I'm not having any of the headaches and stuff that I was having for a year or so. So they helped me a lot. When I had the next concussion after another car accident, I healed much faster, because I was just like, I don't care what anybody else says. I know what needs to happen right now, and it is not going to more hours at work. It is talking to my doctor about needing rest and taking care of myself, and healing as much as possible, as quickly as possible, because the more it gets drawn out because we don't have time or whatever, the worse it gets. And just really addressing new emotional stuff that had come up since the last time, and making sure I was like present and current with like dealing with emotional stuff that was holding me back. So, and then that opens up your brain to be like this like much more amazing and full space for you to use. They say that we're only using like 5% of our brain at any time. It's like, what's going on with that other space? I feel like it might just be like 60% emotional baggage that we don't want to look at. Anyways, so I do have videos on dark times videos, so like what to do when you're having trouble. So there's a little bit more strategies for that. And I have videos on meditation and plant meditation, some by me and some by one by my meditation teacher. They just give basic meditation technique. But that's what I've been doing for over 20 years, and that's been good for me. It's non-judgmental. It's not religious. And yeah, plenty of herbs. But I definitely do one-on-one consultations. So if you need some help, I think you can get well, and I'm happy to help you. I just wanted to say there are some really positive things that came out of this, that significant head injury that I had and the other head injuries. But mostly that really bad one, because I did have to think about it a lot and heal from it a lot. And that was that my intuition increased a lot. And I think that is partly because of that the compromise to the blood-brain barrier. It is kind of like reflected in the rest of your body, your energy body. And I've known a lot of other people that have had significant head injuries, and they have had difficulty with cognition, but improved intuition. And I would even say that that's something that I was really trying to cultivate at that time. So, not the way to get it, but that is a positive side of that experience. And I would say that I like myself better from after the head injury than before, which is kind of hard to say, but I would say that I feel much more sensitive to other people's emotions than I did before, which is good because I care about people. And I feel like I am more sensitive to my own emotions. So because I had so much emotional sensitivity there for a while, I had to learn how to not just work through my own issues, but also to protect myself more from negative outside influences. And so I learned to protect myself more from unpleasant emotional situations. And that is good even as I'm recovered, because who needs that kind of stuff in your life? I mean, it's good to be able to tolerate difficult emotions, but to have boundaries for people that aren't very respectful. And it was good too, because a lot of my self-identity, my self-worth was based on my intelligence before this. And losing that temporarily was incredibly intense. And it made me really question who I was as a person and what my value was. Interestingly enough, the only thing that didn't seem touched by the memory loss and everything was my herbal knowledge. It was actually amazing, and I felt like that was because the herbal knowledge was put through so many different pathways in my brain that it made such a picture, whereas math is just like a very limited, narrow pathway. So for every herb, there's like 4 or 5 names and different stories of healing and of like how the plant looked and tasted and smelled and all that stuff. So it was like a miracle when that happened. But I'm just saying that because really valuable things came out of that concussion for me. And so if you're someone who's struggling with recovering from concussion or post concussive syndrome, or you are a companion and someone who cares about somebody who's recovering in that way, just think that there could be some really valuable growing that's happening, and that's not to be overlooked in spite of how challenging it can be to go through this. If you like this video, please like and subscribe.